to discuss. I'll leave it to you, Tim.
Sorry, yeah. Actually, Jim, I'm not really prepared for this. I'll let you drive if you may.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, I just saw the recording has started. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, not a problem at all. So, hey everybody, thanks for bearing with us for the rocky start here for the SIG Docs weekly meeting. I am Jim Angel, one of your co-chairs. It is March 30th, 2021, and it's 10:30 Pacific time. So I'm going to throw the agenda in the chat. And first, before we get started, any new contributors joining us today that'd like to introduce themselves? All right, well, welcome back. Good to see everybody. Moving on to the updates and reminders, this week's PR Wrangler is Ming, and next week's PR Wrangler is Zachary Sarah on GitHub, or is that core lesson? Approvers, make sure you know your scheduled PR Wrangler shifts. The link there is also in the agenda. And so moving on to our main agenda, Release 121, quite a hot topic. We're getting down to the wire. Let me pass this over to Ray to take us through where we're at.
All right, so tomorrow is a big deadline for docs. It's a docs complete deadline. I put our current status as yellow because we still have 7 open doc PRs that are under review. We did ping appropriate SIGs and appropriate people who are marked as reviewers under the KEP for tech reviews. Most of them are we're waiting on additional tech reviews, except for one that I'll talk about a little bit later. So the integration branch is healthy. Next week, I put in the agenda just the high-level steps of what's going to occur next week in regards to the 121. In regards with the 121 release, like creating the release branch, getting help from SIG Docs chair to update Netlify, freezing the repo on the day before, and so forth. So put those high-level steps in the agenda. I know, Jim, I know you gotta go, so I won't go into great detail of those, but anyways, yeah, so that's pretty much it. I just want to thank all the SIG Docs reviewers for all their reviews, and especially on how quick and thorough they've been. And so I think that's it for me. And I do want to continue a little bit more with the issues and PRs and the next in the agenda in a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Ray. And one thing I've done in the past, I don't think I did it for the 120 release, is we usually will create a Zoom kind of war room, if you will, for docs. It helps out just having that link handy and ready to go in case any fires do occur. I will say over the past 3 or so releases, things have been a little less on fire-y. So knocking on wood, it's not needed, but feel free to DM me if I don't create that. It just comes in handy. If needed, we already have a room ready to go.
All right, I will. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all your work on this release. It's been a fun one. And then also I saw that Divya mentioned some of the blog posts coming out and the timing around that. Is there any updates or any concern for folks in SIG Docs around the blog posts?
I guess I can speak for the blog team a bit because recently I became a blogs reviewer, but I haven't really done much for blogs. But what I will say is that it's a bit unclear from my point of view, and I'm intending later today to sort of kick off some conversations and find out the best way that I can help and what needs to happen.
Cool. That sounds great. It sounds like there's a plan. It's a little bit more structured than it has been in the past as far as the scheduling and releasing of the blog. So cool. So moving on to issues and PRs, right? So it's all you. It's your show.
All right. So first PR 27088. So this is a 121 doc PR, and this is the one that needs more than a tech review. So a new page was added. Yes, new page was added. So I just want to highlight this. Appropriate people were pinged on to give a tech review. Tim, I saw I see your comment there as well. Anyway, so this is for servers internal traffic policy. since we have the addition of that new page, I wanted to get eyes on this. Any questions so far?
Sorry, I'm like looking at this now. So this is the equivalent of a drive-by review, but so many questions. Just looking at this, it's not the adding of a page that's necessarily problematic. It's that it's not very useful information. But maybe that's just my high-level overview.
Hi, can you please repeat the number of the pull request? I can't find it.
Yeah, it's 27088. I'll put the link.
Thank you.
Chats.
It's in.
Tim did.
Oh, now I see it. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, before this page was added, it was just a feature gates update.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'll have to take a closer look at it to get more context. I'd hate to have everyone on this meeting watch me discover everything as I find it out. So I'll definitely take a look at that and leave feedback as I see fit.
All right. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, that sounds good to me, unless there's anything else on that besides it being a new page and getting more eyeballs on that.
All right, next one, I just updates the config.toml for 121. It already has some LGTMs on it. Made some changes on it, but I think we just needs an approval. And this is for the dev 121 branch. This is PR 27223. And this is part of the release process of updating the config.toml.
I'm going to drive by approve that because the intent of the pull request is entirely in line with what we should do for the release.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to continue on with the next one. The next two are actually kind of related. It's for the reference docs for 121. And there's some changes. So the first one, 27248, generate reference doc with the 1.21 release candidate .0 tag. We've had some build issues with this. With Karen and I have tested it. And one of the later comments is that since the tag, the v0.21.0 tag, isn't available yet until the 121 release next week, about possibly preparing this document, I guess, on the release day or shortly or within hours of the release. But both Karen and I did have some build issues that we couldn't debug yet. And she chimed in here.
And I'm wondering if we should move this process to after the release is cut, the updating the reference docs in the handbook. Unless someone has an alternative way, maybe Karen or Ximing could suggest an alternative solution with this non-existent tag. I do know in respect to the reference docs, while we do want to get them out the door as soon as we go live with the new release, it's not necessarily a mission critical set of documents that come out with the release. So it's very favorable to get an ASAP, but I know a few releases back when I was leading one of the docs release actual release process, when we went to go live, there were some issues with the reference generation, and I think we didn't get it resolved for, I want to say around 3 or 4 weeks until it was actually fully up and working again. And so I tell that anecdote by basically sharing that it's not going to be the end of the world if these aren't in place to go live. I wouldn't consider it a blocker. However, I do think we should consider the process, or at least document awareness around this kind of chicken and egg problem that we have, and maybe there's a better time or a better place to generate those. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions or comments on that.
I do like the idea, and I'll bring it up with Karen and Ximing as well. If that's something that we could change in the rule handbook in the timeline and have it changed for 1.22.
Cool. That sounds good.
All right. The last PR is 26413, sort of related. It's about preparing the API reference documentation. I just want to get eyes on this. So it kind of ties in with the release as well. And if this is the reason why I want to bring this up is if we need to add in additional task on the Docs rule handbook for any future release to do something similar that Philippe has done with this pull request on preparing the API reference documentation for future releases. So that's what I wanted to bring up with this pull request, is mostly just like, is there something that we can add on to the Docs role handbook that relates to this pull request?
Yeah, so I know Zach's been really working with Philippe on generating that, and I haven't been as closely involved with it, but do we have the instruction set of what Philippe did here for the PR that was opened, or no? Because it seems like adding those instructions to the release handbook so it could be managed by other folks would be helpful.
Do we need to still generate the single page referenced as document as well? Is that covered?
That's an excellent point. I know we talked about deprecating or removing the kind of old landing spot for the reference docs. You're running kind of the two of them at the same time there.
Yeah, there's a few things that I spoke to SIG Architecture about this a while ago, and there's a few things that I think we want to do before we can properly deprecate the old page, and I haven't done them yet. I wanted to get them done for the release, but that hasn't happened. And so I think we need to, unfortunately, put more, because we've got two in parallel, we need to, one, prioritize the switch, but also make sure that the old single page is done as well.
Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like we should prioritize this on some of our quarterly planning as well, track it, keep up with it. But it sounds like maybe for the 121 cut being so close, we might be leaving it as is, unfortunately or fortunately, I guess, depending on who's involved.
Okay, so let me clarify one thing. SIG Architecture, the request from SIG Architecture was when we deprecate it, dual run for one more release after that.
Gotcha. So potentially this could be the one release after that and deprecate it in 121.
So I don't think we'll get that done. It's too soon. I think we're more likely to deprecate in 122, and 123 will be the final release that has the single page API reference. And I think that's as good as we can make it. Like, I don't have time to get that done, I don't think, what I need. Ray, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Do you know what you need for the old, currently canonical, but kind of soon to be deprecated single page API reference?
I'll have to look into it, but I could ping the SIG Docs channel if I need any inputs on that.
Okay.
Cool. And I got to drop, so I'm going to kick it over to you, Tim. Thanks all.
Bye, Jim. And also thanks, Jim, for covering when I was kind of hitting the ground running at the start of the meeting. Okay. Are there any more issues or pull requests that people are keen to discuss before we move on? Okay. Abby, Google Data Studio. Tell us about that.
Yes, hello. Hopefully my internet stays stable, and I don't have video. I've been having some internet problems all day. But Jim and I and Irvi have been working on how we can get Google Analytics out to the masses, in particular the localization group who's requesting access to that in a better, sort of more manageable way than just emailing it out weekly or whatever, or monthly or whatever. So I was able to set up a basic default template in Google Data Studio, which is a free data visualization tool, which you can export data right from Google Analytics to create like a whole dashboard that shows, let me see, do you think I can share my screen so I can kind of show this off?
Yes, if you don't have access to do that, let me make sure that you do have access, Abby. Do you have screen sharing enabled now? I don't know what the settings are.
Yeah, I think it's there. So can you see my screen?
I see it.
Okay, so this is just sort of a basic template that was honestly something that was defaulted from Google Data Studio. And it's set up sort of like the same, the access level is the same way for like Google Drive, so you can share it and have the link accessible to anybody who can find it. And it pulls directly from the Google Analytics site for the Kubernetes website. And you can see what was there for you can change the time limits on it. You can see what the most popular pages have been and some shiny graphs. Just a lot of breakdowns of things people were looking to get access to. So what things have been the top search items for that time period. You can also adjust for specific continent and regions. So you can update, so you could just see, you know, whatever, if you only want to see what people were seeing in England. There's a lot of data to process, so the things are a little bit slow. This is probably a bad example because it might take forever to load. But anyway, so you could just sort of see just an example of what we were thinking about doing, so we can give people more regular access without having it be something we'd have to email out. So the idea is we'd be able to set up in some email address. Wow, this is really taking forever to load. This is a really bad example, but set up this in some accessible way for some account that is owned by whoever the SIG group is, and have it accessible just to anyone. And then we'd have to figure out, you know, the best place to host this and who would have access to it for any other requests for additional information or whatever. I don't know how to cancel trying to do this.
If it's really slow, you might find that just turning off screen sharing kind of lets your internet recover a bit, Abby. That's
a good idea. Okay, so yeah, so that's sort of our overview of what we were thinking. So we wouldn't have to set up regular emails that exporting emails through Google Analytics is nice, but it has a lot of overhead. You can only do it for a certain period of time. So every 6 months, somebody would have to re-update setting up the schedule. And whatever. So we were thinking of doing it like this, but we wanted to obviously present it to the community and see if there were any feedback or any ideas people had, or if anyone had more experience. I haven't used Google Data Studio that much, so if somebody had experiences or had more information about why this wouldn't necessarily work, happy to hear any feedback there.
Okay, has anyone got any comments they want to mention? That looked really interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be one of the users as a localization team, and I thought that looked actually really good. Yeah, that was my impression.
Could I ask Abigail if you could give a summary of what you think the sharing options might be? So do people need to have a Google account in order to access that? Can you share with people who don't have a Google identity? What are the requirements?
Yeah, so it was the sharing requirements are, you can set the access so that anyone on the internet can find and view. So I haven't tested it much because I haven't opened it up, but it's being able to set that up so that people will be able to just find it over the internet. So you wouldn't necessarily need a Google account, and maybe we can find out some way to have a specific URL, so it's not just like the long ugly Google Data Studio URL, but actually have it accessible to some on the website or something, so it looks like it's on the website.
Okay, cool. I don't know if you want to do this, Abigail, but we could log a couple of issues, one for the short link and the other one to sort out resource ownership for the data studio. There's like an infrastructure group that I think might be a good fit.
Yeah, sure. I can set up setting up those issues. Yeah.
Cool. Any more comments on the Data Studio and the public analytics access? Okay. Thank you very much, Abby. Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, do you think it'll be possible to maintain access, like depending on the language or like depending on a team in different directory, for example? I don't know how it works, because each language or each, I don't know, team should have independent accesses, right? So
I believe we will be able to, and Abigail is proposing that we will be able to make data available that do not reveal any personal information about people. And so we will be able to make this public for everyone. That is, I think, what you're aiming for, Abigail. Is that right?
Yeah, so the main report would be accessible to anyone, and then we'd have to set up some way to figure out, like, if a localization team wanted a specific report, how we would go about getting that made, or whoever would have access to owning the reports that are generated.
okay, thank you.
My gut feeling is if a feature is useful for, say, the Japanese localization, make it available to every localization, because why not? Any more comments or questions for Abby on that? Okay. That looks really interesting, and I think that's going to be a really valuable feature for a bunch of different contributors, localizations, whatever. I'm just really impressed already. Okay, well, that moves on to the agenda. Are there any other topics people would like to raise before we close the meeting? Okay, I'll do a little countdown. 5, 4, 3.
Bye, everyone.
2, 1. Right, that is a SIG meeting. I will give you your day back. Thanks.
Bye,
Cheers, bye.
everybody.